wasn't using spoken language to communicate. I
Mm.
recall one day I was asking my mom, and I asked him, like, why is he not using spoken language to communicate?
Yeah,
And my mom said,
yeah.
God made us all unique. Then
Oh,
if I
wow.
think if I think about it carefully now that I have the knowledge about the auditory
Yes,
system, my parents
yes.
wanted to instill possibly a principle of respect for other people and embrace their uniqueness. But of
Yeah.
course, curiosity was still lingering at the back of my head. And not like to say I didn't believe my mom at that point. So, but then I have to criticize as well what she
Yeah,
told me now that I know better. And
yeah.
a career exposure in high school. In high school, we also had some career fair type of activities where we had to visit different sectors and get exposure to different careers. I
Mm.
recall in my early matric, then we went to one of the neighboring hospitals. I
Mm.
went to almost each and every department there, like internal medicine, dental, surgery, almost everywhere in the entire
Yeah.
hospital. And there, Vera, the last stop was by audiology. And
Mm.
I found the audiologist was busy doing ototoxicity monitoring on an
Oh
MDR
my
patient.
gosh.
That was back in the days as well, where the ototoxic nature of the medication was not really that much understood.
Yeah.
And yeah, the
Sakile,
patient was there. Mm,
just a quick note to all our attendees and
mm,
listeners. We'll quickly clarify what all of this means. I think Sakile and I could have a fat chat, and we'll quickly clarify what audiology is, and Sakile will
mm,
come back and tell us what this particular audiologist that he observed was actually doing, whatever that big term
mm.
means. Yes, you can continue, Sakile.
Oh, it's difficult to break it down because it is within
Well, no, don't worry, don't
my
worry,
vocabulary.
don't worry.
Yeah,
We'll get
and
to it. We'll get to it. Yeah.
no problem. And yeah, at that point, the audiologist, like I said, she was busy like with the patient, and the patient appeared confused and everything. So well, I didn't know the terminology well back then, but she
Okay.
sort of exposed me to the audiogram and said, okay, before the patient was initiated on treatment, that was the hearing. This means the hearing was normal. And then she showed me the subsequent audiogram that showed that the hearing was profound. And now that I have the in-depth knowledge, and I'm thinking at that point, if then I was if I was a clinician,
Yeah.
I would have known that that case was really was impossible to intervene. So that also
Mm.
made me more fascinated, and also it sort of ties well with the curiosity I had growing up with a little boy who was deaf and not being able to use spoken language to communicate. That way, I started like uh, understanding the relationship between hearing and also language. And
Wow.
university almost brought everything into perspective. So that's where it
Okay.
exposed me to the scarcity of hearing healthcare profession. So not professional, of hearing healthcare services in South
Mm.
Africa. And that also illuminated my interest to pursuing a career in audiology, because I said, you know what, guys, there isn't much of us. And look, the
Yeah.
statistics says we have
Yeah.
this much people
Yeah.
who have disabling hearing loss, but who is there
Yeah.
to intervene. Then that's why I said,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm done, I'm staying. So
Fantastic.
yeah. Mm,
Fantastic. That is such an encouraging story to hear that,
mm,
something that you noticed in your early childhood from just, playing and being social
mm.
with other children to a conversation with your mom who, I think instilled some of the principles of integrity, like respecting other people,
Yes.
and
Mm,
respecting their uniqueness, to just that curiosity building up until you're exposed to different professions and you realize, okay, maybe I want to be in health. And then once you picked a health stream, then you went to, okay, actually, maybe that thing that I noticed, and especially that incidental hospital visit where you actually were
exactly.
privileged to see the professional
Mm,
live, and then you were like, this is what I'm doing. And then of course in
mm.
university you were kept in the profession, because I think a lot of university students also change a lot because that confusion is still there. And if the environment in the university isn't captivating, you will change. And so we're glad, I can speak for the audiology community, we're glad we're glad that you stayed. Sakhile, to quickly dial it back, quickly let's talk about what is audiology, what does an audiologist do, so that everybody is clear from here on.
Okay. So if I can define an audiologist according to the HPCSA, which is the Health Professions Council of South Africa, under our board of speech, language, and hearing, it clearly states there that an audiologist is a healthcare and educational professional who deals with the prevention, identification, treatment, and management of disorders of auditory and balance system, auditory processing disorders, and developmental or acquired disorders caused by hearing loss. So audiologists basically are healthcare professionals who identify, assess, and manage disorders of hearing balance. Yeah, so just in simpler
Fantastic.
terms.
So you know what I always say when I talk to my grandmother, because she doesn't, when I say audiology, she doesn't know what that means. She wants to know, so what do you get paid for? Why do they give you money at the end of the month? And I always related to her to say, you have a doctor that you go for everything. Then you have a doctor for the eyes, then you have a doctor for the teeth, then you have obviously in very conversational speak. And then I say, what I do is the ears. And she always gets it because she's like, oh my God, of course. I notice now. And of course, as soon as they understand what you do, then they also have problems, with their hearing. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And for those of us, remember earlier when Sakhile was explaining that when he went to the hospital, he found this audiologist doing ototoxicity screening, very big word. But very simply put, this is a screen of someone's hearing ability after they are taking certain medications that may be known to have side effects like negatively affecting your hearing. So that's what that meant. And perhaps just as a FYI, TB, tuberculosis, is mostly prevalent in Southern Africa. And I think in South Africa, especially, not just Southern Africa. And a lot of the TB medications are very life-saving. And we're very thankful for that, because a lot of people are beating, the stigma, they are beating the disease. But unfortunately, what they end up with is a lot of the side effects, and some of them is losing your hearing. And I think the other word that I made a note of here, Sakhile, when you're explaining, is of profound loss. So that means, you and I, or most of us in this webinar, you are accessing this webinar visually, you are listening to us, orally with your ears, which means we can assume you can hear well. But as soon as, you go to an audiologist, either someone like Sakhile or myself, we assess you, and then we find, oh no, you don't hear so well. Then we start grading it. It starts to be something mild, and then it goes all the way down. And as soon as it gets to profound, that's when we say you are profoundly affected by hearing loss. And he also mentioned deaf. That's also another way that we can refer to hearing loss. So that's deaf, but it is very important to note that it's deaf with a small d. Deaf with a capital D, however, means people who are not only affected by a profound or hearing loss, they are also identifying themselves as deaf communicating individuals, number one, and culturally they identify themselves as deaf. And I think the one amazing thing that happened of late in South Africa is that sign language and deaf people were acknowledged by the highest office in the land, where sign language is being officiated into the 13th official language in South Africa, and I am clapping in sign. So that was the teacher in me. I was trying to make a note so that I keep all of our attendees, intact. So Sakhile, you told us about, how you grew up and how you ended up choosing audiology. So I had to clarify all those terms. And then we're going to talk about the integrity bits, and then we talk about, how you became an integrity icon. We're going to get into all of those details. For everybody that has joined, I'm sure most people have joined now. We are also live on Facebook. I also wanted to inform you guys that there are two things I want you to be aware of. Number one, there is a poll. Okay, the poll, if you go onto the chat box, there is a poll. So please make sure you fill out the poll either during the talk or towards the end. Make sure you fill out the poll. And then secondly, there's also a survey. Make sure you go and you fill out that survey. All right. Now, Sakhile, I am starting to see some of our attendees are typing in some of these questions, and I will ask them in the end. So if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A, drop them in the Q&A box. And I think some of our audiology colleagues are in audiology are joining in, and I can see some love from some of our audiology and health professional colleagues. They're joining in. Hello to everybody joining in. So, Sakhile, talk to us about your journey in audiology. So now you graduate from university and you finish. Now you're a qualified audiologist. What is that like? Where are you working? What is Sakhile enjoying about his job?
Oh, I started working in 2017 in started off with community service as our fellow audiologists know that we have to we have an obligation to serve a year before you can branch into your private practice. So that's how I got into employment in audiology, and I worked I worked at a rural hospital, and I remained there up until now. So it's been almost now 4 years. So I recall it's been almost 4 years now in the same place. Same place. Yeah, I recall my first time coming in this particular institution, where I felt like I would get the opportunity to also learn in my community service but to be under supervision of a qualified audiologist, like to find a fully functioning audiology department. But well, for me, it wasn't that case. I was the only one. ComServe, I had to man up basically from ComServe and run the department by myself. I must say, like, my institution was very supportive. They were honest from the beginning. They said, we wish we could help you, but we are not knowledgeable in it. We're not qualified in audiology. So, but the least we can do is to link you up with neighboring hospitals so that you can get assistance whenever, like, you have a difficult to solve cases or something like that. Yes. So the first few days, the line, I remember navigating through my equipment. It was like new fancy equipment that I've never been exposed to. And the moment I was taking a sip of water, they said, oh, there's one patient for you. After the other one, as I was leaning on the door, the queue was long, as if someone announced and say, hey, there's an audiologist coming in the town. There is an audiologist coming in the town. Mind you, this hospital that I'm working at, it has a large catchment area, including its clinic and also old ages and centers around town. And also I'm servicing 2 other rural hospitals. So in total it's 3 that never had audiology. So they are all under me. Then things got
Oh, sorry. Continue. I thought you were done. Continue.
Okay, no, I'm not done. Then in 2018, I became permanent. I became, they call it like a level 1 production audiologist. So I started receiving my my first community service audiologist.
Oh,
and
fantastic. So you got another Sakhile.
Yes, and then the department grew and grew and grew and grew up until now. So
Fantastic. That is so amazing to hear that when you went back as a public servant, as a civil servant, with your new qualification, you're now a health professional, you had a supportive environment in the public sector. And I think that's really important to put out there that, there are supportive environments for you to learn, for you to grow and, become an icon like Sakhile. And you moved in as a community service audiologist. And for our attendees that are not health professionals or not aware, what happens in South Africa is when you graduate You finish, you get your degree, but the government has a mandatory period where you must serve in a public hospital. That is because of the history of our country, our socioeconomic status and our social political history means that there's certain areas that just would never get access to certain professionals. So all of us, when we graduate from university, whether you're a medical doctor, you're a dentist, you are this or you're that, you have to serve your mandated time. Obviously, the intention is to service the rural hospital so that there's always someone. So every year or two, there's new people that come, but the service stays there in the rural. So when you finish your mandated time, you can leave and go to Joburg or wherever else people want to go. But I personally think, where it's really happening and where the change really is and where, you get tested in terms of your skills and how much you can contribute as a civil servant is still in public sector and especially in the rural sector, like you're saying. And I mean, it's amazing to hear that you've grown to now be managing other ComServes who 4 or 5 years ago was you, and you came in and there was no one. And, for them, they will have a different experience. So that change has already happened. Fantastic. I see a question in the chat. Someone was indicating that they cannot see the poll or they cannot see the survey. We've just put it up. You can fill in the survey. And I can also see the poll for myself. It comes up on your screen and you can answer it as you are listening to our conversation. So, Sakhile, talk to me about your journey with integrity, and talk to me about your journey with the Integrity Icon campaign. What was that like? I mean, what happened? So you're working, you're doing your job, serving the people, and then what happens?
I would say, you know what, the years of my community service, being alone here and working hard to build a department has really paid off through the award. Okay, well, to cut the story short, yes, I was nominated in, now I forgot the year, I think it was in 2019.
2018. No, 2018.
Yeah.
19.
Yeah, it was 2018. Yeah, it was 19, actually, last year.
Oh, 19. Okay.
Yeah. It was last year. Then what Accountability Lab does, then you are contacted afterwards when your nomination went through, and they will tell you that you were top 16. Then they kept on keeping you updated, like how far, are they with the selection process and everything. Then up until I got to top 5, of which you are essentially all the winners. There in top 5. Yeah, I think I was the youngest icon. I was the youngest icon last year.
Fantastic.
I remember amongst amongst the cohort that I was with, I was the youngest. And
That's amazing.
As I also obtaining the award and also to be part of the campaign, it also served as an affirmation that I am on the right track and I serve humanity in a way they should be served at first place. So which is by honesty, fairness, respect, regardless of the person's socioeconomic status. And also such recognition, of course, it comes with a huge responsibility.
It really does.
As some people now are looking upon you and possibly expecting no mistake and in how you conduct yourself, like everywhere. So basically they expect perfection without realizing that at the end of the day, I'm also a human being. But I also noticed that when you live with integrity, of which you influence, motivate, and inspire, not just by words but by action, others, they see a positive example and they also want to attempt to emulate that and when you leave, so like when you leave, so the poll just came out, I'm just gonna skip it. So basically, when you live with integrity, you'll experience like a number of benefits, of which some I've noticed. Here, the example, what I'm just going to tell you now, it's not like I had to observe it. So I could feel that, okay, here it is because of my action that led to that opportunity to come up. So you
Yeah.
become like a valuable person, both as a person and also as an achiever. So people see the importance and value of you, the value that you add within your workspace. So like I said, unfortunately, not everybody will tell you that you are important. It's often reflected in their actions as well. So you'll see you're gonna be asked like all the time to involve in certain committees or in certain projects. They trust you. They know your work ethics. Like I said, they won't say it's because of you got an integrity icon award, but it's reflected through your actions. Yeah.
I think that's such an important testament of, sometimes you can be consistent, you're keeping your head down, you're doing your job, you're passionate, and like you said, sometimes as young people, I'll also reflect myself. It's hard to get that validation and that affirmation that you're doing great. You are doing great, and I think, it doesn't matter whether you're a health professional, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a policeman, or whatever your service to civic society is, you are doing well. And I think we can thank the Accountability Lab for being that voice that often in public service, people want to name and shame the public servants that are not doing well. But accountability comes, they name and they fame the good things, and they fame the good actions and the man on the grassroots level. And I think this is really, really important, especially for youth and for young people like yourself, Sakhile, who are now starting to serve in leadership positions in hospitals, where you now have other hospitals that are under you. You're now servicing a bigger catchment area within your own facilities. You're now serving in critical committees. And I think this is really, really important for young people to take cognizance of that. The world may seem like it's falling apart now more than ever under COVID-19, but there really is a lot of good in the world, and we're just shining a very little light onto audiology. But this could be anyone. It could be, a nurse, it could be a cleaner at a school, it could be anyone. If you are doing your bit and you're doing good, I think organizations like Accountability Lab, whether they notice you or not, they're here to remind us that affirmation is good. And you don't have to wait until you're 75 for you to be called a leader and someone who's doing well and someone who can be respected. Young people are out there, they're eager to do the things, Young people are really passionate about civic service. I'm so excited, Sakhile. So talk to me about, if you were to talk to younger Sakhile that's considering a career in audiology, or as a health professional, or younger Sakhile that's already studying in these tricky times, online learning and COVID-19. What advice do you have, career advice, do you have for them that you feel you didn't get? Or what do you now know as an audiologist that you didn't know back then?
Okay, what I didn't know that learning starts in community service. That's where because that is where you get like a great deal exposure of what's going on out there.
In real life.
I remember in real life, yes, because I remember at university, you would only possibly be exposed to, I remember when we were doing our clinical rotations, you will see like maybe 2 patients for diagnostic hearing tests like a day, and because you need to spend some of your time to other modules, and maybe, and also you need to write reports. And most of our work that we're doing at the university was mostly collaborative, where you are not actually alone, and still you didn't have that authority you basically didn't have authority. And now that you are in a position where you are alone, and everybody said they're saying on the table, audiologist, we're waiting for you, tell us what's happening with the patient, and you won't hide anywhere. So that's what I'm saying, learning starts in community service. And also the exposure is because if you think about it, 80% of the South African population are reliant on the public sector for healthcare services. So you learn a lot. You get a variety of cases. That's why I'm saying learning starts in community service. And also another important thing is going by book is not always practical. And so continue to embrace the knowledge that you received from university, but be willing to compromise. because
Okay.
you won't always have the same in public sector. You will have to give up certain knowledge or put certain knowledge on hold. And I mean, as an audiologist, you'll know like
Yeah.
how scarce it is to get like an ABR or to, I mean, in the public sector, for example.
So yeah.
I can't remember when last I performed a P300 test or something
Yeah.
like that.
So basically be open and be flexible. You may come with the best
Yes.
knowledge in the world, but sometimes be flexible to the context that you're
Mm.
practicing in. And
Yes,
you know,
yes.
you're gonna learn a lot at school with whatever profession that you're in,
Mm.
but the real learning, it never stops, but the
Never
real
stops.
learning starts in practical working when you are in community service or
Mm.
internship or learnership, whatever that profession calls for you to do. That's when you start learning. So I think
Mm.
this is also another lesson, Sakhile, that I'm observing from you, that you know you're a lifelong learner and you must be humble because not everybody is teachable. So even when you come with all your degrees and all your certificates from university, you must still have a teachable spirit. You
Mm.
must be humble to
True.
learn from, you know, from the environment. And even when you're alone, you can learn from the nurse, you can learn from the security guard, and sometimes you need to learn a different language. You were lucky you went to the same province where you grew up in. If you went to a different province, you would have had to learn a different language. I think those are really, really important gems.
Mm.
Sakile, my last question. Unfortunately, I can't believe how time flies. My last
Oh,
question for
yeah.
you.
And was it? Okay.
Time flies. I
So
made a
short.
note. We
Mm.
started chatting at about 17:08 and it's now
Mm.
17:38. So my very last question,
Mm.
you know, do you want to talk to me about being an audiologist, the mental and the emotional side of practicing as an audiologist
Mm.
now during COVID-19? I know you also have a very, you know, a personal story to this, but
Personal
if you
story.
can,
Mm.
you know, give us just a glimpse of what has it been like, you know,
Mm.
practicing out there in the front lines in the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mm. Yeah, I would say like COVID-19 really, it has forced us to reinvent the wheel and at a very fast rate. I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that also contributes to disturbances in our mental sanity. And in a short space of time, one had to learn new ways of
Yeah.
service delivery, of which most of the suggested methods that are actually in line with COVID are not always practical in the public sector, and
Mm,
which is telepractice. And
yeah.
being in a rural community where most of our patients are not even digital literate and
Yeah.
coming from
So, so,
hmm,
so just a quick note for those
hmm,
attending and listening. Telepractice is essentially using technology to practice or to deliver healthcare services.
hmm.
Yes, continue, Sakile.
So yeah, of which in order to practice, I mean, one of the requirements to, I mean, of tech to use technology, you must have
Yeah.
data, and like I
Yep.
said, you must have also some form of, some form of digital literacy. And I
Yeah.
also feel like, you know what, although that method, well, it's preferred for, I mean, at the moment, but that's not a traditional way of practicing
Mm,
audiology, and you sort of like
yeah.
feel detached as well to the
Yeah.
patient, and I'm sure the patient might also feel possibly the same way. And also
Yeah.
another thing that I've noticed as well is the mandatory use of face masks
Yeah.
also poses a huge challenge to the population that we serve at the moment, that are, I mean, or that we rehabilitate. So especially people who are hearing impaired or hard of hearing or deaf rely
Yeah.
heavily on facial cues such as like lip reading to get what is communicated to them. And now that they aren't able to communicate effectively as the result of that, so they even feel more isolated. And it
Yeah.
also makes us feel like, are we really doing, I mean, the work correctly or not?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also taking case history while being armed with PPE. Also, it's a challenge. It's like really a
Yeah.
challenge. Like
Yeah.
I mean, like you know, the population that we serve, they need to read your facial cues in order
Yeah.
to get communicated to them. So those are like, there are more frustrations that I'm not able to practice the way I should or in the
Yeah.
traditional way. So that's where
where you are.
Yeah, that's where we are at the moment. And
Yeah.
also that's where the frustration and mental problems arise because of those little things that we have to change in order to accommodate COVID at the moment.
Oh, I think everybody and in every profession, we've had to adapt, we've had to change, we've had to, let go of non-essentials, whatever that means, and I think in all the professions and all the service models that people are involved in, it's a slipping scale. There were very essential things that happened in March, and now there's more things that are, that are being led through. But thank you so much for the awareness. We have come sort of to the end of our chat, and I think the last thing I really wanted to say is this is really a perfect timing for Accountability Lab to be hosting and allowing me to chat with you as an icon, as a colleague in the field, and just learning from you, but also as an ode and a nod to the fact that September is Deaf Awareness Month, and hearing health awareness is something that we in the hearing health professions are pushing. So to a lot of us that don't know, there are a lot of people that struggle with hearing loss, being born with the gift, and we call it the gift of hearing, is, oh my God, you will not believe it is a privilege. And so we hope you go get your hearing screened. We hope you are more sensitive to the fact that when you have face masks on, there's some people who may have hearing who may have hearing loss and may not hear you clearly. And, we're very thankful for people like Sakhile who are serving us in the community, in the rural levels, and are doing it passionately, are getting awards for it. And even after a long day at work, they sit for interviews online. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sakhile. There are questions from the attendees.
I hope I'll be able to answer them.
On the chat that we now, I think we have a few minutes to answer. So to those of you who are attending, please remember to participate in the poll and answer the survey. And also if you have a question for Sakhile, quickly pop it in the chat now so we can chat about it. So I'll quickly scroll here. Excuse me if I'm not looking straight at the camera. I'm trying to read. So a colleague, I think, in the profession, I'm not sure, somebody give me a heads up. Are we supposed to say who's asking the question, or just ask the question? While he give me that clarification, I'll just read the questions. It says from the story, I think it's from the story that you were talking about with your mom, and when you noticed the one boy who was hard of hearing. And they're saying ethics were being instilled at that early age. What does that mean to you now as an adult? I know, right? Such deep questions, but I think it's about not looking back at that kind of experience, especially also even having that, that conversation with your mom about respect, about appreciating everybody's uniqueness. Now, as an adult, when you look back, what does that kind of interaction mean for you now?
Oh, I mean, so many thoughts in my mind.
Yeah.
I think this ties well with the question. I mean, that the Accountability Lab once asked me, like, why are you serving with integrity? Like, I mean, why you consider yourself serving with honesty? And I was like, how can I answer that? So I believed that there was a biology, different, there were a lot of factors that contributed to that. I thought there was also that possibly, I wouldn't say a biological component, but that upbringing from parents that also contributed towards that, of me considering myself as a person who serves with integrity. But
Yeah, no. I think it's they always say hindsight is 2020, and I think the more you reflect on, you know, the
mm,
kind of person you are, what is your purpose, and
mm,
what has brought you to this purpose, whether it's, you know, practicing whatever you practice in your life with
mm,
integrity, or you know, just being a truthful human being.
mm,
When you look back, you can see this, there were so many building blocks, like you're saying, whether it's
mm,
biology, nature, or nurture, as your parents, as your
mm.
community. So many things can contribute to the human beings that we are. I'm scrolling in the chat. I'm looking for more questions. While I check to see if there are any questions, I'll pop you this one question,
Mm.
my dear friend. Do you, if you were to give Sakhile advice, Sakhile before Integrity Icon, you know, say maybe he was facing a particular challenge, whether it's a challenge with affirmation or thinking, oh my God, why am I, you know, why I'm in public service? What kind of, you know, uplifting message would you give to that Sakhile, you know, to let him know that, hey, you'll be sitting here, you know, almost surviving, you know, the COVID era, and you'll be an integrity icon. What kind of words would you give to him to, um, yeah, would you give to Sakhile back then?
Mm. I think I would give him, there's this one particular quote that I like by
Okay.
Martin Luther King. It's also
Yeah.
on my email signature.
Oh.
It says like, not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
Sakile, you just keep getting my brownie points. I'm just like, if I didn't like you already, you know,
So it's like
I like you more. So that is, not everybody can be
be
famous,
famous.
but everybody can be great, because greatness is about service.
Mm.
Oh,
So you
that's
shouldn't
amazing.
worry up. Yes, so you shouldn't think of maybe like the fame part, like whenever you do
Yeah.
something, yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Do
Because
it
too often
anyway.
yes, because you're gonna relapse at some point because you're expecting something,
Yeah, you're
then
expecting this
yeah,
external validation. And I think
yes.
I think that's amazing. We've got one last question from the
Mm.
attendees. They're saying, what was the one lasting lesson or big lesson you learned during your comp serve? I know you already said, you know, you realize this is where the learning starts, but what was
Mm.
the big lasting lesson you learned in your community service?
Rome wasn't built in one day.
Ah,
Yes, that's one thing I've learned. Like, you know what? Be patient with yourself. Because that was the
yeah,
problem that I had. I tried to figure
yeah,
everything once, and
yeah,
I tried to
yeah,
make sure that the department is like up to standard, is fully functional. It's because I was stuck in the university ways, like of how things should be.
yeah.
Like I said, you know what? It should have written it and that
Yes,
and that and that and that and that. Then I
yes.
took a step back. Then I was like, you know,
Rome
whatever,
was not
whatever
built
I've,
in a
yes,
day.
yeah,
Yeah,
what I've done,
fantastic.
what I've contributed now, and you just never have, you mustn't doubt your contribution. That little thing, that patient education you provided, it might have helped
Mm,
someone. Mm,
fantastic. There's another question. Another question. I think the questions are, you know, coming in as you're talking. You know,
We've
Rome
got a
wasn't built in
Q&A
a day.
time.
You know, give people a chance to ask questions. Rome wasn't
Mm,
built in a day. This one is about your profession. It says, what
mm.
would you like to see being improved in your profession in audiology? What's the one thing you'd like to see improved in audiology?
I would like to see more audiologists being trained because currently we are, I think if I'm not mistaken with the statistics, we are less than 2,000 audiologists. I think if not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read
Mm,
somewhere, and we are all spread it like in different sectors like academia, private, and public. I would like to see
yeah.
more so that we can have also full coverage and also to increase accessibility and also to be prioritized by the government as well. Because I feel like at some point, I feel sometimes the government was, and not really government, or I would say like South Africa wasn't ready for us. That's why we still constantly have to advocate for budget, advocate for
Yeah.
equipment, advocate
Yeah.
for this. And yeah, unfortunately, it is only us that can do that job. Nobody can because we have the
Yeah.
know. But yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
I
we
think
need.
that's a really, really important thing to mention. And I think also if I step outside of the facilitator role and into the audiology role, there isn't a lot of us. I think audiology is just one of those, tiny niche specialized fields that, number one, I think a lot of people are not aware of. And number two, there's not enough of us because we we are so few and we are so super specialized into one thing. So to those attendees listening, if you're in high school and you're considering a career, consider audiology and speech therapy. I did it. I'm thriving. I love it. Sakhile did it. He's thriving. He is an entire integrity icon. So consider
Hello.
audiology. And I think it's also important in a country like ours to see representation, to see young Black African descent youth that are out there and are out there servicing our people. I think it needs to be done. It's one of those things that we need to get to, that we just need to get to a point where we're not preaching representation anymore. And in terms of government, I think in a developing country, there's still so many things that need to be prioritized, that, we are still at a point where we're just still trying to save lives. Never mind get to a point where once a person is alive and we've saved a life, let's look at all their other functions. How is their well-being? How's their quality of life? How's their
The
mental
quality
health?
of life, yeah.
How's their hearing health? How's their vision? So I think we are getting there. And as a developing country, and one of the ones that are ahead in Africa, in audiology, I can tell you we have the most audiologists in Africa in one country. So on that light, we're fortunate, but on the other end, we're also still servicing almost 60 million people. So when you put it like that, there's very little of us. So
We're not
come
meeting the
join us.
demands.
Come join us. And if you're in audiology, please stay. Please stay. Yeah, Sakhile, I think if I am if I am paying attention to everything, I have asked all the questions that the attendees have put out, and I think my job here is done for the evening. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all the attendees for joining us. Make sure before you leave, you fill out the poll and you fill out the survey. I will now hand over back to the Accountability Lab people. Yeah.
Wow, it's always like so lovely to get like a little glimpse of two professionals just chatting to each other about, the work that they do. And it was nice just to sort of just sit in and just listen, to you speak about the work you do with so much passion, and so much grace. So I know you said so many times, Vera, thank you to Accountability Lab, but really thank you to the both of you for the amazing work that you do and for your service to this country. We really appreciate you. And we're really so grateful to have young people working with integrity and making such a difference, in our country. So thank you so much for that. We also want to thank our attendees, everybody that joined us this evening. Thank you for sharing Thursday evening with us. This was our second installment of the Meet the Icon webinar. We will be hosting one monthly until the end of the year. So please look out for the next one. That's going to be next month. And follow us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. We are everywhere. Just type in Accountability Lab South Africa or Account Lab South Africa, and you will find us there. But yeah, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye for now. Thank you, everybody, once again. And yeah, good night. Have a good evening. And
Bye,
please
everybody.
fill out the poll and the survey before you leave. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.